A 12-year-old girl stood up in class and said something simple, something true. "My mom is in Congress." Her teacher laughed, not because it was funny, but because he didn't believe someone like her could come from someone like that. But what he didn't know was that her mother was Karoline Leavitt, and she was about to walk through the very doors he thought she'd never belong in. Without further ado, I'll get started with the story, and don't forget to give me a subscribe button to keep up with the most exciting stories. Tuesday mornings were usually quiet in room 217, the scent of pencil shavings mixed with lemony floor wax. Desks aligned like soldiers. Posters of the Constitution and photos of historical presidents hung slightly crooked on the wall. An American flag fluttered lazily from the vent above the whiteboard. Mr. Denning, a man in his late 50s with gray at his temples and the posture of someone who enjoyed reminding people they were wrong, tapped his marker against the board. "All right, class," he said. "Let's do a quick warm-up. Name someone in government you admire." He wrote the word admire in blue, underlining it 3 times, as if admiration had rules. It can be a senator, governor, even a mayor, someone real, someone working in politics today. A few hands shot up. Emma said Ron DeSantis. Jack picked President George W. Bush, and Mr. Denning chuckled approvingly. "Good choices," he said, scribbling their names under leadership. More hands rose. A student named Maya mentioned Michelle Obama. Mr. Denning nodded and added former First Lady under influence. Then Ava Leavitt raised her hand, quietly, almost too small to notice. She wasn't the kind of student who volunteered often, not because she didn't have anything to say, but because she had learned that some rooms only pretend to listen. Mr. Denning tilted his head, slightly surprised. "Ava, let's hear it." She stood just enough to be heard. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "My mom," she said. A few kids turned to look. "She's in Congress." Karoline Leavitt's silence, thick, immediate, and then a short, sharp laugh. Not from a classmate, from the teacher. "Oh," he said, blinking rapidly like he was trying to place the name. "We meant real members of Congress." His tone was joking, dismissive, but the damage was surgical. The classroom erupted in confused whispers. One boy muttered, "Isn't that the lady from that Fox clip?" Another giggled. A girl covered her mouth in polite disbelief. Ava's chest tightened. She stood still, then slowly sat back down, her ears buzzing. Mr. Denning didn't miss a beat. He turned back to the board and said, "Let's stick with someone current. Someone real, please." He added Obama with a grin like he had told a good joke. And just like that, her truth was swept off the board like it didn't belong there. For the rest of the class, it was just another Tuesday. But for Ava, the world had shifted. And that laugh, it wasn't loud, but it was lethal. Ava didn't raise her hand again. Not when kids rattled off names of public figures. Not when someone praised their mom for running a food drive. Not when Mr. Denning said, "See? Strong leaders shape strong families." Not a single student looked at her. Not even Elise, her closest friend. At lunch, the air was lighter for everyone else. They talked about TikToks and sneakers and who might ask who to the dance. Ava picked at her sandwich. Her smile came when called for, but it didn't touch her eyes. She sat at the end of the bench, her tray neatly untouched, backpack still zipped. When recess came, she stood near the far fence. The bricks felt warm in the sun, familiar, solid, unlike her. That afternoon, her mom pulled up outside school like she always did. Black SUV, windows down, radio tuned to a local news station. Karoline Leavitt smiled. She always did when she saw her daughter, like every day was a reunion. "Hey, baby," she said, reaching to tousle her daughter's hair. "You all right?" Ava nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." Karoline knew that line. Knew it from press briefings, from campaign staffers, from voters too polite to say what they meant. But she didn't push, not yet. They drove home in silence, past the library, past the old church with the bell tower, past the gas station with the flickering sign that always said, "God bless America," in mismatched red bulbs. Ava stared out the window the whole way. The world outside looked the same, but something inside her had cracked. That night, she barely touched dinner. She sat at the table with her fork spinning circles around her mac and cheese. Karoline glanced up from her laptop. She was still wearing her navy blue blazer and gold hoop earrings. Her congressional ID badge hung off the side of her bag. "You're not eating," she said gently. Ava shrugged. Not really hungry. Her mom didn't press. Not yet. Later that night, Karoline knocked on her daughter's door. "Heading to bed," she said softly. "You need anything?" Ava was curled on the bed, scrolling aimlessly. "Number, I'm good." Another lie. Karoline stepped inside, leaned against the doorframe. "School all right?" Ava's hand paused on the screen. She wanted to tell her. "He laughed at me. He didn't believe I was your daughter. He made the whole class think I was lying. But instead, yeah," she said. "It's fine." Karoline nodded once, smiled. "All right, kiddo. Sleep tight." She closed the door softly behind her. Inside the quiet room, Ava sat up. The glow of her tablet lit the wall beside her. She opened her notes app. She typed, "He laughed, not because I was wrong, but because he couldn't imagine someone like me having someone like you for a mom." Then she deleted it, not because she didn't mean it, because it felt too raw to exist outside her. She opened her photos instead, scrolled until she found the one of her mom standing on the Capitol steps, fist raised, a smile cutting through the Washington wind. Her eyes stung, but she didn't cry. She just stared and whispered, "Why didn't they believe me?" Mothers don't need reports. They don't need proof or paragraphs or principal calls. They know. They see it in the way their children drop their eyes when asked about their day. In the too fast, "I'm fine," in the untouched dinner plate, in the way joy suddenly feels borrowed. Karoline Leavitt didn't ask her daughter again that night. She waited, let the silence speak, and it did. The next morning, as the sun peeked over the hills of New Hampshire, Karoline moved through her routine. Coffee brewed strong, suit jacket crisp, phone already buzzing with calendar pings from Capitol Hill. But her eyes drifted toward Ava's bedroom door. Closed, quiet, still carrying weight. That afternoon when Karoline picked Ava up from school, she noticed something in her daughter's walk. Slower, more deliberate, like someone carrying a bag of bricks no one could see. The ride home was mostly silent, until they pulled into the driveway. Karoline turned the engine off. The car settled. "What happened, baby?" she asked, not soft, not stern, just solid. Ava hesitated, then finally, like a balloon letting go of its knot. "He laughed at me." Karoline blinked. Her hands didn't move from the wheel. "Who?" "Mr. Denning. I told the class you were in Congress. He laughed, said we meant someone real." Karoline's stomach clenched, but her face, it didn't flinch. "Did anyone say anything?" Ava shook her head. "They just stared." Like I lied. Karoline didn't yell. She didn't storm into the school with a press badge or a lawyer. She reached across the car and took Ava's hand, held it. "Thank you for telling me." She met her daughter's eyes, calm, grounded. "We don't scream to be heard, Ava. We speak to be understood. And when someone tries to laugh away our truth," she leaned closer, "we walk in." Ava nodded slowly. She didn't know what that meant yet, but it felt like safety, like someone turning the light back on. 2 days later, the students of Lincoln Middle School gathered for a civic engagement assembly in the old auditorium. The same red velvet seats, the same broken mic that squeaked if you moved it too fast. Mr. Denning stood at the side of the stage, clipboard in hand, adjusting his tie. He was preparing to introduce the local town clerk, a woman who, while qualified, rarely spoke above a whisper. But Mr. Denning didn't get the chance, because as the house lights dimmed, the side doors opened, and Karoline Leavitt walked in, not with fanfare, not with cameras, just a slow, confident stride, blazer sharp, hair pinned back, no notes in hand. She didn't need them, because she wasn't here to perform. She was here to remind. Whispers rippled across the room like electricity across a wire. That's her. Isn't she, like, on the news? Wait, Ava wasn't lying? Even the teachers shifted in their chairs, straightening their spines. Mr. Denning froze. His clipboard sagged in his hand like a failed prop. Karoline didn't look for him. Not yet. She walked straight to the stage, took the mic, waited for the murmurs to settle. Then she began. "Good morning," she said. The room silenced. "You may not know me. Some of you may not believe I belong here." She paused. "But I didn't come to convince you. I came for one reason." Her eyes swept the crowd and landed on Ava. "To remind every student who's ever spoken the truth and been ignored or laughed at that their voice is still sacred." The silence in the room deepened. "Heavy, holy." Karoline continued, her voice low and steady. "See, my daughter stood up and said something honest, something bold. She said she admired her mother, me." A beat. "And that truth?" Got met with a laugh. Now she turned slowly to look directly at Mr. Denning, not with rage, with precision. "That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need permission, and it doesn't need validation. It only needs someone brave enough to say it out loud." Mr. Denning swallowed, hard. Karoline's tone softened, but not her resolve. "Titles don't make you important. Suits don't make you credible. Your conduct does." A few students blinked, wide-eyed. Even the principal, seated off to the side, looked like she had forgotten how to breathe. Karoline turned back to the students. "Don't let anyone make you small for telling the truth. Don't ever shrink because someone can't handle your story." She nodded once toward Ava and stepped back from the mic. No applause, no music. Just the sound of 1,000 thoughts colliding in young minds who had never seen Grace look quite like that. In the crowd, Ava sat motionless. Then slowly, carefully, she smiled. And for the first time all week, she felt tall again. The auditorium didn't erupt in cheers when Karoline stepped off the stage. It didn't need to, because the silence she left behind said more than applause ever could. It was the kind of quiet that rearranged things inside people, not loudly, but permanently. The rest of the assembly passed in a daze. Students shuffled out of the auditorium more slowly than they'd entered. Teachers whispered in corners. The principal offered Karoline a handshake twice, and Karoline responded with a single nod, then left through the same side door she'd entered. No press releases, just presence. But back in room 217, something had shifted. Mr. Denning didn't mention what happened. Not directly. He simply set the tone the next morning with unusual hesitation. His voice, typically brisk and exact, was softer, unsteady. He opened class with a single question. What makes someone a leader? No whiteboard, no clip art, no filters. Just a room full of wide eyes and unspoken memories. A hand went up, then another, then another. This time when Ava raised her hand, he didn't glance over her. He paused, pointed directly. "Ava," he said, "would you like to go first?" And in that pause, the whole class breathed something new. Recognition. Ava didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She just sat straighter and said, "A leader doesn't need to be loud to be strong. They just need to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." No one laughed, not this time. Mr. Denning nodded slowly. "Thank you." That day, classmates started asking questions. Real questions. Is your mom on that committee about veterans? Does she really work in D.C.? What's it like when Congress is in session? Even Emma, who had once snickered from 2 rows up, approached Ava at lunch with a quiet, "Hey, my mom watches your mom. She says she's smart, like real smart." Someone else asked for an autograph. "It's for my dad," the boy explained. "He watches the committee hearings during breakfast." Ava didn't have to explain herself anymore. She didn't have to raise her hand with a disclaimer. Her truth had been validated, not by arguments, but by action. Later that week, Mr. Denning posted an assignment on the board. Write about someone who changed the way you see the world. And for the first time in months, every student turned in the assignment on time. Ava's essay read only one paragraph. "My mom changed the way people saw me. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand an apology. She just showed up, and the room never forgot it." Karoline didn't mention the assembly when Ava got home that night. She didn't need to. She looked at her daughter's shoulders, no longer heavy, and saw everything she needed to see. At dinner, Ava talked more than usual, about math class, about how the cafeteria chicken nuggets tasted slightly better than last week, and about how a boy named Landon asked if Congress paid by the hour. "I think he thought it was like babysitting," Ava giggled. Caroline chuckled too, and said, "If only." The story didn't make the papers. No headlines read, "Congresswoman silently schools small-town teacher." There was no viral clip, no trending hashtag. But in that classroom, something much more important happened. A lie was undone, and in its place, truth stood. Years later, Ava would sit in a different classroom, a college lecture hall filled with rows of students studying political science. A professor would ask, "When did you first know the power of public service?" And she would answer, "The day my mother walked into a room that told me I didn't belong and reminded them who we were." Caroline wouldn't know her daughter gave that answer. She'd be in D.C., sitting through a late-night floor session, reviewing amendments with her glasses halfway down her nose and a lukewarm cup of tea on her desk. But if she had heard it, she wouldn't have smiled broadly. She would have just nodded, because she never needed to be the loudest in the room. She just needed to show her daughter how to stand in one. And now, have you ever seen a child's truth dismissed? Have you ever wished someone would speak up for what's right? Even when the room doesn't want to hear it? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe courage can be quiet and strength can be inherited, subscribe now for more stories like this, where truth walks in, even when it's not invited.